So why don't we go ahead and get started. I want to first thank everybody for being here on fairly short notice. As you may know, my name is Mike Lyons. I represent David Beatty. I've represented him in connection with the lawsuit that was filed surrounding David's contract at the University of Kansas. Let me just jump right in. We're here today to announce publicly that David has received notice from the Complex Claims Unit attached to the IARP proceeding involving allegations that were made back in September of 2019 that involved NCAA violations. David has now been informed that he has been dismissed from those proceedings. So just to sort of recap, my client wants to make the record clear, since there have been a number of statements that have been made by Kansas during the pendency of this ordeal. What he wants to make crystal clear is that after nearly 3 years of this ensuing debacle, there has been no finding by anyone that David has ever violated any NCAA rule. And as we sit here today, we now have confirmation that there's not even an allegation that David has ever violated an NCAA rule. So this is vindication for David Beatty, for Rainey Beatty, for the entire Beatty family. I know that it's been a long, arduous process for David. I want to recognize some people on behalf of David, because this has been a long journey for everyone. Henry Jimenez has been David's counsel throughout the entire NCAA investigation and then the ensuing IRP proceeding. There's a reason why Henry is the best in the business, and his reputation is certainly deserving. The result in this case speaks for itself. I also want to recognize the men and women that comprise the Complex Claims Unit that looked at this case, as well as the IRP. When the NCAA handed this file off to have it reviewed by the CCU and then ultimately decided by the IRP, David really put his faith in the process and hoped in his heart of hearts that what would result is an opportunity to find the truth. And this result speaks to that. They have found the truth, and David is now done with this. I need to comment just a moment on how we got here and one of the reasons why we're here today for this press conference. As some of you may recall, in November of 2017, David was terminated without cause as the head football coach at the University of Kansas. He was asked, there were 3 remaining games that remained in the season that year. David was asked to remain on as the head football coach, and he was told that he would be paid consistent with his contract with Kansas. David agreed to do that, and David fulfilled his promise. Kansas did not. Kansas did not pay David. Instead, what they did was they launched a phony investigation, and an investigation that was aimed at ginning up alleged NCAA violations so that they could attempt to fire David with cause under the terms of his contract. By the middle of December, shortly before Christmas of 2018, David received a letter from Kansas, and the letter essentially said, "We've launched an investigation, and based upon that investigation, we are not going to pay you under the terms of your contract." Fast forward ahead. By March of 2019, after David had exhausted every attempt to try to resolve this with Kansas, he was forced to file a lawsuit in the Kansas City, Kansas Division Federal District Court in Kansas. That lawsuit alleged that Jeff Long, along with others, had conspired effectively to conjure up a series of allegations against David in an effort to avoid paying him money. Kansas doubled down on their actions. They issued a statement in the face of that lawsuit and said that, number one, David Beatty failed to cooperate with an NCAA investigation. That statement was false. It was false then, and it's still false now. They also publicly indicated that David had broken NCAA rules. That was objectively false at the time. And today, based upon this announcement, it is objectively false today as well. Following the institution of that lawsuit, Kansas ultimately settled the case. That was also public. They settled the case for $2.55 million, but not before doubling down on what they had done. They issued another statement, and I had to write it down to just remember to recount it exactly what they said. They said that despite the settlement, that Kansas maintains that the facts and principles behind its position remain intact, whatever that means. If it means that the facts that they relied upon to take the actions that they did had anything to do with this man violating NCAA rules, we know that that was false. So that brings me full circle to why we're here. Kansas launched a phony investigation, and when they did what they did, it had contractual ramifications for David. That's ultimately been resolved in the civil courts. It's been settled. But what a lot of people don't know, and what a lot of people have probably forgotten, is that this good man for the last 3 years nearly has been sitting on the sidelines unable to get a job because of what some at Kansas set in motion. Because when you make an NCAA violation allegation and you turn that over to the NCAA is duty-bound to investigate it, which they did. The NCAA handed that off to the IARP and attached it along with a larger case involving Kansas basketball, which I know many of you are probably familiar with. So David was then trapped in a vortex, which was this larger case involving Kansas basketball, the allegations involving Kansas football, which involved David. Frankly, following our lawsuit, the NCAA amended to add additional allegations against the Kansas football program that didn't involve David. They involved Les Miles. And those allegations ultimately came about because of information that we learned during the course of our case. So the point is that David has been rendered to the sideline for the last 3 years and has been unable to get a job because of this plot against him. And today we announced that David is free from this saga and that David is able, once again, to work in the coaching ranks and do what he loves and what he's so good at. Let me just say one last thing as this has played out over the last 3 years. And the Rainey family, the Beatty family has had to endure this, David and Rainey both, as well as their 2 beautiful children. This has never been about David Beatty or Rainey Beatty having ill will towards Jayhawk Nation. I can tell you, and I'm sure David will tell you if asked today, that he still holds a very special place in his heart for the Kansas faithful, for their fans, for the traditions, for the institution, and he is grateful and appreciative for the opportunity that he got at Kansas. What this entire thing has been about is what's right, making sure that David in the process of this hasn't unnecessarily had to suffer unfairly, reputationally, and clearing his name, which he has now done. So I know that David will probably point that out in more detail. I want to say also that to the extent that the Kansas fan base or the Kansas administration has an opportunity to look at this as a learning tool, frankly, any institution, about whether this type of path is the type of path that a proud institution like Kansas would want to take, here's the opportunity to change direction in the future. And indeed, I think they've already made some improvements in that regard. So I'll turn this over to questions. I appreciate everybody being here, and I appreciate your time.
Real briefly, I'd just like to say a special thank you to particularly Mike Lyons, Chris Simmons. He's not here today, but Chris Carr. These guys have been just wonderful to me and my family as we went through this process. So thank you to the whole Lyons and Simmons family, and it goes all the way throughout the halls that we're sitting in today. All of these people are just phenomenal, and I would highly recommend them to anybody that needs help in the future for sure. And then certainly Henry Jimenez. who represented me in my NCAA portion of the case. He is absolutely the best in the business. So thank you, Henry, for that. I appreciate that. We'll take any questions you have.
Here's a question for David. What do you hope is next for you now that this is settled?
The question is, what do I hope is next for me now that this is settled? First, I'd also would like to thank all of those in our coaching fraternity, and it is a tight-knit fraternity. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Houston Nutt, who has gone through some really tough things in his career, and he has been a great confidant of mine throughout this process, and I just thank him for his time and his knowledge that he's been able to share with me. But all the friends out there in the business, I've been offered a lot of opportunities, and for whatever reason they may not have transpired, but I just want to thank all those people that are friends of mine in the fraternity for giving me those opportunities, even when maybe they didn't work out. But obviously the obvious answer is to get back on the sidelines and being able to help young men become better men one day at a time.
Any other questions?
Yes. How many job opportunities do you think you could have had during this time that you were unable to pursue because of the allegations?
Like I said, we are a very tight-knit fraternity of coaches. The question was, how many job opportunities do you think you would have had? I'm not going to speculate on how many that I think I could have had. I will talk briefly about the opportunities that were offered to me by very good friends in the industry. I'm not going to mention who they are out of respect for them and their institutions, but I want to say a special thank you to you guys out there that did offer me that opportunity. Just know that I'm very grateful of that, and I'm grateful of the opportunities that did come my way, and I'm also grateful for the other things that I was able to do during this time period, being able to spend a lot of time with my mother who just passed away recently, and being able to reconnect with my daughters again. So there's a silver lining in everything.
Yeah, let me elaborate on that just for a second, because I want to make sure that everybody understands. Really before the clock hit 000 against the University of Texas during the end of the 2017 season, there were already people knocking on the door wanting to hire David. And certainly after that, after David's tenure at Kansas formally ended, he had opportunities. He was in the mix for coaching positions from coast to coast at big Power 5 programs, well-known, winning programs. And the problem is that when you're a football coach that is associated with or has an NCAA rules violation alleged, where you're named in a notice of allegation, the coaching staff may want to hire you. Heck, the athletic director may have approved it, but most institutions, and perhaps rightfully so, aren't going to hire a coach who is the target of a notice of allegation. So the impact of this is David had lots of opportunities to go to various schools that would have been great jobs for him to continue his career, but he couldn't because of this notice of allegation, which we're here to talk about today and has been dismissed. So hopefully that, in the minds of people that have questions about that, will understand what that entails.
I'd also like to just add to this, to piggyback off what Mike had said earlier. My wife, Rainey, and I and our family, we are so grateful for our time at the great University of Kansas. Man, the Jayhawks have been some of the finest people we've ever come across in our lifetime. I want to thank all of our Jayhawk friends, and quite frankly, all the Jayhawks that I've come in contact with since the day I left Kansas. They have been nothing but classy and terrific to our family. It's a terrific place, and we know what we're getting into as coaches when we get into this business. Sometimes things don't work out, but it's very rarely about the people of the school. Sometimes it has to do with maybe the leadership, but I will say this, those folks are fantastic. I would highly recommend that university to any young man or woman. The question was, why did I choose to remain in Kansas after I was dismissed? Unfortunately, I did not remain in Kansas. I have at the time my daughter was 15, she was a freshman in high school. She's lived in 11 houses, and we've done that enough to her. And depending on what job that we might be taking, whether it was an analyst job or whatever it may be, the hope was to be able to get back to a full-time position somewhere soon. We didn't want to have to move her twice. So that was really the main reason why we kept our main household, my wife and my daughter there, but I relocated to Austin and spent several months in Austin and a little bit of time in Dallas.
And how did you maintain your sanity as you endured this ordeal of having your good name soiled through this entire process?
You know, I think the big thing for me was I just believe in right. I believed in Mike. I believed in Lyons and Simmons. I believed in Henry. And I just believed that eventually the right thing will come out. I mean, was it easy? Absolutely not at times. But listen, based on what a lot of people are going through, it wasn't hard at all. So we're very blessed in a lot of different ways. But I mean, I just believe in that the right thing is the right thing, and eventually the truth would come out. And thankfully, thanks to the letter that we have today, the truth is here, and I'm just grateful for that.
There are things I'd like to say. I'm not going to make this about Mr. Long. I will say that I'll answer that with a question. Is Jeff Long the athletic director at Kansas?
You know what? Today is just a great day for my family and I. Probably, there's no doubt, more so for my wife, to be honest with you, my wife and kids. But, you know, today's a great day because when you get your name back, man, you only get one of those. So getting your good name back, I'm very fortunate because a lot of times it doesn't happen. And I'm just so thankful to Mike. Yep.
Any other questions?
Does anybody have any other questions? Well, thank everybody for being here.
Oh, wait. One last question.
One last question.
David, you moved to Austin with hopes of becoming an analyst in Texas. What are your plans now?
You know, I've been very fortunate to be able to be consulting in a few programs throughout the country, so I've gotten to see the inside of a bunch of things that I don't think I would have ever been able to do. We simply don't have time to do that, but so I've learned a bunch. I've been able to be around a bunch of high schools with a bunch of really great players, so I feel like I've prepared myself to stay up with the times with regards to where the best players are located, and I think that's going to serve me well as I move forward. But I'm excited about getting back onto the sidelines and doing, you know, what I love. It's a privilege, not a right. I just can't wait to do it again.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.